You know what's actually insane? Housing prices are falling in most major markets right now. Inventory is climbing, sellers are getting desperate, and somehow it's still basically impossible to buy a house. Like the market is crashing and not crashing at the same time. How does that even work? Here's what nobody's talking about. The median home price dropped 6.2% nationally between peak 2022 and now. Listings are up 38% year over year in some cities. Days on market are stretching longer. Every traditional indicator says buyers should have the advantage, except they don't, because while prices are technically falling, the cost of actually buying hasn't budged at all. In some cases, it's gotten worse. Mortgage rates are sitting around 7%. Let me put that in perspective. In 2020, you could get a 30-year mortgage at 2.7%. That's not a typo. Under 3%. The monthly payment on a $400,000 house at 2.7% is about $1,600. That exact same house at 7%, you're paying $2,660 monthly. Same house, same price. $1,000 more every single month just because of when you decided to buy. So yeah, home prices dropped 6%, but your buying power dropped 40%. The math is absolutely brutal. But it gets stranger. Inventory is climbing because people who bought or refinanced between 2020 and 2022 are locked in at those absurdly low rates. They literally cannot afford to move. Someone sitting on a $500,000 house with a 3% mortgage is paying maybe $2,100 monthly. If they sell and buy another $500,000 house today, that payment jumps to $3,300. They'd be paying $1,200 more per month to live in a different house of the same value. Why would anyone do that? This creates what economists are calling the lock-in effect. And it's completely breaking normal market behavior. Usually when prices soften, inventory floods in because sellers see their window closing. Not this time. The only people selling are those who absolutely have to. Job relocation, divorce, financial emergency. Everyone else is just staying put, even if they hate their house, hate their neighborhood, hate their commute. Meanwhile, builders are caught in their own nightmare. Construction costs haven't dropped. Labor is still expensive. Materials are still expensive. But they're competing with existing homes that are now sitting on market longer, which means they have to cut prices to move inventory, except they can't cut prices below their cost to build. So new construction has basically stalled in many markets. You'd think this would help first-time buyers, right? Wrong. Because the homes sitting on market longer are mostly at the higher end. Luxury stuff, move-up properties, the starter homes, the condos, the small single families that first-timers actually need, those are still getting snapped up instantly because there's virtually no supply. Builders aren't making them because the margins are terrible. So we've created this bizarre situation where the market is simultaneously cooling and overheated depending on which segment you're looking at. The overall numbers say buyer's market. The actual experience of trying to buy says something completely different. And there's one more factor making this exponentially worse that almost nobody's connected yet. Private equity firms have spent the last 3 years buying up single-family homes at a pace that would make your head spin. In 2023 alone, institutional investors purchased over 90,000 homes. They're not buying mansions, they're buying the exact starter homes that first-time buyers desperately need. And they're paying cash, which means they win every bidding war automatically. Here's why this matters more than you think. These firms don't need to sell, ever. They're holding properties as rental inventory, and with rents still climbing in most markets, they have zero incentive to liquidate. So those 90,000 homes just vanished from the pool of available housing for regular buyers. Permanently. The collision of all these factors creates something genuinely unprecedented. You've got sellers who can't afford to sell, buyers who can't afford to buy, builders who can't afford to build at price points people need, and institutions vacuuming up whatever's left. The market isn't functioning. It's frozen in this weird suspended animation where everyone's waiting for something to change. But the thing that needs to change is interest rates. And the Fed has made it pretty clear that's not happening anytime soon. So what actually happens next? Because this can't continue forever. Something has to break. Here's the most likely scenario, and it's not what anyone wants to hear. We're probably stuck here for years, not months, years. Home prices aren't going to crash because inventory is still too constrained, but they're not going to surge either because buyers are tapped out. We're looking at a long, flat period of basically nothing happening while everyone waits for rates to normalize. The people who bought at the peak with 7% rates are going to feel the pain the longest. They can't refinance because their home value hasn't increased enough. They can't sell without taking a loss. They're just locked in, making enormous payments on houses that aren't appreciating. Meanwhile, the wealth gap gets worse. People who already owned homes before 2020 are sitting pretty with low rates and increased equity. People trying to enter the market now are facing the worst affordability crisis in modern history, and institutional investors keep accumulating properties, further tilting the advantage away from individual buyers. The American dream of homeownership isn't dead, but it's on life support. And the diagnosis isn't good. This isn't a normal market correction that fixes itself. This is structural dysfunction that could define housing for the next decade. You're not imagining it. It really is this broken. And pretending it's going to magically resolve itself is just denying reality. The game changed. Most people just haven't accepted it yet. The housing market isn't going to fix itself. And waiting for it to return to normal is a waste of time because this is the new normal. The question isn't whether you can afford to buy, it's whether you can afford to wait while prices stay flat and institutional investors keep absorbing inventory. Either you find a way to make the math work now, or you accept that homeownership might not be in your future at all.